Hello, Papa Dog and I are making a video together. This here is part 3 of my series Friedrich, for Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, and particularly for his fairy tale, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and I am commenting with these videos on this first chapter that I have read in the first video of the fairy tale, and I'm getting into the symbolism, I'm getting into deeper into the psychology of it, what he meant with this, what he's trying to say with his story. So I talked about what it means God is dead. Doesn't mean there is anyone dead, or there isn't even a dead God. What it means is that, of course, there are many gods that people have created, and they're all alive in our heads, and they're alive in history books, and they're still spinning and swirling and coming into our dreams. What he means by God is dead is that this concept, the conceptualization, or the idealization, this shedding one's own responsibility onto another entity, onto another figure or person or institution, that thing is what he calls dead. He experienced himself in a new era that had evolved when he was a young man, somewhere around 1850, 1860, somewhere around 1860. What is the era where, Charles Darwin had written his first books on the origin of species. That was his first book, and many philosophers worldwide caught onto this and started to question the old status quo, started to question things. Where have we actually come from? Did we come from Adam and Eve? No. Okay, so Friedrich, starting out as a very dedicated Christian, very, very, very studiously, deeply going into the Bible, studying the Bible in depth more than anyone else in history has. So, following into his father's footsteps, wanted to become also a priest, a preacher, minister. I don't know what these different status levels are, but that's what he wanted to become. He wanted to be a theologian. He wanted to teach people the message of Jesus and what it said in the Bible. So then, as he studied that in depth himself, and then Charles Darwin's book and the other philosophers, and also Arthur Schopenhauer, who was there before him, these things started to come into his brain. He started to question all of these things. He examined the Bible very closely. He saw the contradictions in it. He saw, obviously this has been written by hundreds of different people, as if it's kind of like a guest book, and everyone stops by and writes something in it, some kind of poem or an anecdote or something, some kind of story, or their version, when you have criminal reports for some kind of crime scene and different people are interviewed, different people have very different perspectives on a specific event, okay, and even on dimensions. So people have different dimension perception ability. So they have done studies on this, for example. So, if you have a book that was written by many different people that looked at a story from a different angle or had a different experience in this regard or had met different people at different times and other people had met the same people at completely different results. So that's what it's like. And he questioned all of this and he said, why is this being taught? What are we supposed to learn from this? And so he became quite disillusioned and bitter about it. So he got into all kinds of things, even into Buddhism. People don't know about this. He started to study some of the Far Eastern philosophies and religions and perspectives and got into this and got into metaphysics and this and this and that and questioned all of this and agreed with Schopenhauer that life is harsh. It is indeed, and we suffer, and what is the purpose of all of this? And I want every single person to do this, to ask these questions that are so vital and not let someone else say, hey, you're not supposed to ask any question. That is retarded, not to ask questions. We live here and we have to ask questions. This is extremely important. So I got into the superhuman, what it is. Is it a person? Is it a concept? What is it? It can be a person, but it's most of all what it means is a state of mind in which I let go of the self-image and the approval from others or my status or whatever that people cling to. They cling to pittances. They feel like they fall into an abyss if they let go of a certain measly thing, that they finally have hogged onto themselves, whether it's a title or something they can put into their bathroom as toilet paper, or some kind of achievement of some sort, or some kind of public communal recognition, or whatever they got. So a measly second-hand status as some kind of mafiosi in a corporation like Monsanto, and they cling to it with hands and feet, even though that job sits on a foundation of falseness and violence. So they are cling to it no matter what. People do that with religions. That's why we have these religions. That's why they perpetuate themselves. And all they are equally to Monsanto, standing on a platform of lies and violence. Is that the foundation of your life, of your philosophy, of your way of thinking? Think this through and question it. Why don't you make love the foundation of your life? Love and peace and kindness and respect. Respecting one another. That's the most important thing. That's more important than getting your job done. That is the foundation of every job and of the foundation of every house that is built. Whether it is an actual house or whether it is a mental construction. Love has to be the foundation of it, the cement foundation of it. So that's the superhuman. Religion is anorexic and starved and a pitiful existence. That's what it is. It's a pitiful complacency, as he calls it. So it is a leaning back, letting other people do, letting other people run your lives. That's a horrible compromise to make. Don't make that compromise, is what he's trying to say to the world with this. So And religion is full of contempt. It doesn't let anyone else in. It is. That's why I call it fascist, because that is what fascism is. Fascism says my way or no way at all. My way, and I'm not going to let you have your way. That's fascism. That's what religion does. Okay. So we don't want that. We don't need it. It is not beneficial for us. Okay. So they call everyone else unpure. That is not of their ways of thinking. Okay. That's very fascist, and that is a violent foundation. That's a violent mindset as a foundation, okay, which gives rise to physical violence as we see it throughout the world every single day, okay, and throughout history. So, and then he also mentioned that people will say, what is compassion? Isn't that the Jesus guy on the cross? And now I have compassion for that Jesus guy on the cross. Whether that actually happened or not is another story, but let's say it did happen, maybe it did. Then it is, why do you continue to perpetuate a scenario of torture, of such extreme violence? Why do you perpetuate this in your minds and in depictions and in figurines? Okay. Why perpetuate a bleeding person on a cross that has been stabbed, that has been had a thorn crown put on the forehead, and so on, where blood pours out of him, where he's hanging there in agony? Why do you perpetuate something like this? That is my question to the world. Why not, if you like Jesus so much, you don't even know how he really looked. He probably looked like Saddam Hussein. Okay, that's my guess. So, or maybe he looked like Muammar Gaddafi or Yasser Arafat. That is my guess to you. Okay, and why do people think that they have to beautify him, by making him lighter? What's this thing about light skin and light eyes being so regarded as so noble and beautiful? What's all this about? That people need to question. That's racist. Why do you put this on a pedestal? Why is someone who looks like Saddam Hussein, why is that not good enough for you, as a political leader or a spiritual leader? Why is that not good enough? Why does the person have to have his hair bleached and put contact lenses in? So that doesn't make any sense. And why, and then also there was a French sailor somewhere around the year 600, and I heard that the cross, the Turin grave cloth, was actually laid over that person's body and not Jesus Christ. And that's where sometimes they covered people like this. They believed in eternal preservation. How can you preserve a body like this? Why do they have this fixation again on this preserving the body? Even the pharaohs in Egypt did this, and they embalmed themselves, and there's all kinds of these practices. In Catholicism, people also embalmed, and what a waste of materials and resources, and horrible gases that are being released, and all of this is totally not green. Okay, so they had this clause, and yeah, after, in time, the clause kind of took on the contours of that face, as that embalmed face, with all the balms, fluid from oils, from essential oils and resins, and from body gases and decomposition bacteria and funguses and all of this, and then embedded itself into this class. But people think this is a mysterious photovoltaic projection of energy emission, photon emission into the class. No, that's not what happened. It's mold that photo projected itself into that Turin class. Okay, that's all it is. And yes, that happened to be a French, lighter skinned, blondisher, blue eyed, skinny kind of skinny built guy, who was traveling around with ships, and he was a salesperson, some kind of merchant or something. And then people thought that must have been Jesus. No, sorry, you have to go a little bit back in time. It was someone who looked like Muammar Gaddafi, yes, and I personally think Muammar Gaddafi looked good. I think he's good looking, and he was certainly an amazing person. He was generous, and his mission was to give everyone equal wealth. That's why he was assassinated. He was assassinated by the hitman hired by subcontractors of subcontractors of subcontractors to, diffuse where the original intention of him being assassinated came from. And my guess is the entire banking industry, because he wanted to get rid of the currencies. He wanted to get rid of the IOU, the empty money that is in the hands of the banking industry. The banks have you all under control with empty money that isn't even backed up by anything. My husband studied that quite in depth, and he tuned me in on this. And yeah, it is pretty obvious that this is what's happening, and it's pretty sad. And most people have no idea. They don't know anything about finances and how it works, and how debts and all of this works, and how the credit system, giving credit. Some people think their money comes out of the ATM machine or their credit cards. And when the credit cards run out, and they suddenly have people calling them on the phone all the time, because those are the creditor companies that are trying to get attached something that you have because you owe them money. They don't have any idea why and what's this all about and what did I do wrong. They're like, they're like a cow. A cow wouldn't know why they're suddenly calling. They just know that they have to hide themselves from them. So that's all. So this whole system is in the hands of people who know exactly how to maneuver things their way and hold basically no backup value for the empty money, which is basically all just a piece of paper that says, I owe you something, a rain check as at best. So Muammar Gaddafi wanted to get away from that, and he wanted to give people equal real wealth distribution, and he was able to do it, as someone with a lot of leverage in his country. He was able to do this. So that's why they did away with him. If you watch his last interview, that Charlie Rose was lucky to get with him. So what a lucky man that Charlie Rose is to have interviewed such amazing people and such historic marker people. Muammar Gaddafi is an angel soul who wanted to help, but the corporate agenda has the media in their hands, and they will portray it their way, and the public will believe it then, what they say. They don't question it, and they don't even understand any of that. They have never looked behind the scene of these things. So Friedrich Nietzsche, he saw all of these things happening also during his time. There were also tons of those types of things happening all the time. This is human nature, to steal and to take and to hog and to occupy and to guard, unrightfully guard something that's not theirs, but they will just seize it and take full possession of it and get rid of anyone who challenges them. So it's always a massive power struggle, and the Christian church right in the middle of this, like totally involved with the mafia, and the Catholic religion is involved with the actual mafia. The evangelical religion is involved with the corporate agenda, with the big, the largest. And I call all of this mafia, but we have to separate this, of course, a little bit and say, okay, the actual mafia, that is, the Roman Catholic Church and the Italians, the Italian underground scene. Then we have the evangelical church, originated by Martin Luther, who thought he was fighting for someone, just making everything worse, totally double standardly contradicting his own message that he had for the world. Then that became the right hand of Monsanto, Lockheed Martin, the main players in the corporate agenda. The main corporations that have absolutely no vision for the future, that are plain and simply run on the principle of profit maximization. And people need to know this. I think this is extremely important. But these kind of things already started to happen during, in the midst of around 1850 and stuff like this. And into then, of course, towards the end of 1800, and where he died. But he saw all of these things, and he also was a prophet. He also foresaw things that were to come into the future. He was good at intuitively foreseeing and having prophet-like visions of the future, but also of mathematically extrapolating what he sees then and how this is gonna play out into the future. The inevitable unfolding of things that were happening back then and that into the future. So, where people, as he said, where people can't even grow trees anymore, where they can't even grow crops anymore because they have depleted their soil. He said that in more poetic and more parable type of form, in metaphors and so on. And the metaphors, they were always not just metaphors. They were metaphors, and they were also quite actual, quite literal. and scary predictions of things, you know. And that is what metaphysics also is all about. It's like what we think and how our minds work is also going to extrapolate into our actions. It is that is what flows into our ways of dealing with others, of handling things, of going about life, you know, of making decisions in our daily lives, you know. It is your foundation of the way you think and the way you feel about yourself and others that reigns over your decision making. That's why it is so vastly, utterly important. This is a total life changer if we really get into it and think about it, how important our mental foundation is, our psychological mindset is, and the way we feed ourselves, what kind of stuff we put into our bodies, you know, how that influences our ways of looking at life and at other beings. It's fundamental. It's absolutely, it's rail settingly important. It's like you lay the rails of a train. It's put a train on it. It's going to go that direction. It's going to go in that direction unless it falls over. But it's most likely going in those rails that you have set with your foundation. So that's why we need to totally scramble that up, completely recycle it like this, and make something new out of it, something completely different, something that is based on love and nourishment and respect and feeding and loving ourselves, loving our minds and bodies. So infinitely important. Friedrich Nietzsche also did not drink alcohol. He wanted his mind to be completely pure. He moved to Switzerland. He hiked alone into the highest peaks, mountain peaks. And he said, yes, it gets lonely up in the clouds. No one will follow you up there. People are too lazy to do this. And again, symbolism and actuality, literal walking up into the mountains. But that always is a symbol. That's an analogy as well for our mental ways of going about things. So a lot of people find fault with all of that symbolism and, you know, the language using a lot of metaphors and parables. But sometimes he also had to do this to keep things more general. He didn't want to directly insult anyone personally. He also didn't want to get in trouble. And yeah, he didn't want every single person immediately understanding all of this, because he knew if they did, then they would probably come after him like a mob. So he had to keep it a little bit more encrypted, if you want to call it that way. So, you know, symbolically encrypted. And that's okay, you know, that's also his art form. You know, I see it as an art form as well. But there's a message in it, you know. People are so crazy about old statements such those as in the Bible, and they try to interpret, and everyone tries to interpret, But instead of that, they should go for Friedrich Nietzsche's books and study that more in depth and see what kind of amazing fruits will come out of that. Much better fruits. But people, the egos don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear that you have to burn yourself to ashes in order to be reborn as the phoenix. So they don't want to hear, the ego doesn't want to be recycled and scrambled up and made new. The ego clings to its old ways. The ego smells this from 10,000 miles away and makes a U-turn and runs. The ego always runs, always escapes from having to work on oneself, having to recycle the old unfunctional ways. Tony Robbins always said, if something doesn't work, change your approach, you know. So there are things that do not work at all, like religion, but people hold on to it with hands and feet, no matter how violent it is, no matter how destructive and self-destructive it is. This is a big subject, and I can talk on and on and on about this. And I will in my future videos. But yeah, this is also what Friedrich Nietzsche talks about, and that's why he's written so many books, because it's just an ongoing thing, ongoing observations of his community, the other people, people of all, from all backgrounds. He always said, when he goes into another country, it's like a fresh start. You think, oh, you don't have any issues with the people there because you just don't understand their language. But beware, you learn their language, and there are all the problems and the faults. And it is the same old story as in the other country. So, yeah, it is human, all too human. And he observed these things, and he wants to show us the mirror. Okay, he wants to show your egos the mirror. Here, that's your egos in the mirror. Why don't you scramble it up? Why don't you recycle them, these egos? So, and then instead of being anorexic and starved, you tune into the infinite. As Jiddu Krishnamurti said, you go into emptiness. You empty that trash can. You recycle it, and it becomes empty. What he means by empty is you empty out all of these horrible things, the rigid-minded things that you have been told your whole life, the rigid ideas, the rigid sayings and the rigid warnings and all of these things. Throw that out, recycle it. And then when you recycle your ego too, then suddenly in that emptiness there's the infinite. Then suddenly your mind is able to tune into it and tap into it and turn itself on. And there's the infinite. It's and flooding your brain, flooding your bodies, flooding every cell of you. And there you have everything. You have the infinite, which is more than everything. The tree is the infinite. The tree is very happy. It's showing me his fruit. So, or her fruits. I love this tree. Beautiful. Love you. And I was lying under a different cedar tree out there earlier today in the sun, and I always put my head under the branches that are hitting the grass, and I lift them gently. I put my head underneath to keep my face in the shade, because I I'm very cautious with the sun. I get sunburned easily, as you can see. Just a little bit of sunlight when we go to the beach will make my face really red, like that lobster I wore the other day, or the crab. And so, as I was lying under the cedar tree, I when the sun shines into the branches, I look real closely into them, like this close. And then the vision, of course, becomes blurred. But in this blurriness of looking into the actual, what's actually a leaf, but very small and fanned out into different filaments. Not needle, but not leaf. So it's just like a feather, sort of. And I look into it, and the sun will shine into the cells, actually. And suddenly I see little globules, and there's not even water that I see. These are the diffused by sunlight, the diffused vision, creating like a bigger image of the activity that's happening in the cells and in the in the in the tissue of that tree material, of these branches, of these leaves that fan out like feathers. And I see amazing things. It looks like cells. I see cell division happening, the anaphase, when the cell is making two, and then tearing its own divider, and then becoming two and growing up into two big ones. And it is absolutely amazing, and it happening real fast. It happens like this, very quickly. And there's all colors of the rainbow in it. It's absolutely amazing. So he also has the clown, which is very interesting. The clown is a symbol. The clown is a symbol that stands for total freedom of mind. I am a clown. And the Native Americans have a term for this called Heoka. Heoka is, hi, how are you? How are you? Yes, what's going on here? Yes, there's a stellar J. And he looks at me like this. What are you doing? There's nothing anymore in the greenhouse. No, nothing to get. So we're fixing up the greenhouse now. Already looks really great. I bought a table for it, a narrow table. I'll put that in. Fits perfectly. 6 foot long and just like 18 inches in width, and that'll be perfect to put a little chair in and work on. Do my artwork in it. Yay! I can't wait. I'm so excited about that. And it will be perfect in all weather. Even when it rains, it will be nice. And I will have good light in there also for a video, a little bit more flattering video. And so it's really lovely. And we can make the best out of our lives. We can buy amazing things. There are amazing things you can buy and do for a relatively low price, and you can really, if you research good enough, you can make your lives good, no matter where you live. Even if you live in an apartment, or you can grow food on your balcony, you can ask the city if you can have a stretch of land nearby where you can grow food plants, and you can get the people in your community interested in doing it and having a shared project or something like that. There are so many ways to improve your lives just where you are at right now. You don't need to sit there and be grumpy about someone else having a bit more than you have, or there most people have less, so but you don't think about that. You beat the drum of what you don't have, and you stay. That keeps your mind, and also that keeps your entire energetic environment in that anorexia, as Friedrich Nietzsche calls it. It keeps it in it. It's unempowerment. It is entitlement. Entitlement is impoverished mindset. Friedrich Jiddu Krishnamurti talks about this as well as Friedrich Nietzsche and Tony Robbins. They all talk about it. So we need to really put this into perspective and really think about this, really ponder over this, how important it is that we start first with our mindsets. And when we do this, when we start from scratch, and sometimes this is our task, this is our school, actually. This is the homework that was given to us. You are where you are because that's the homework that was given to you. You start from there. Okay. It doesn't matter where it is. There have been people in the San Francisco prison, I think it's called San Quentin. Adi Ashanti went to that prison, and he has given talks in there, and he has tried to help people psychologically. Really, really cool, amazing man. And he said, and he taught people mindfulness and meditation. He said, you have no other venue available. And now you really don't have. You have ridden yourself. I don't know if he said that in those words. I'm saying this. You have ridden yourselves with your entitlement. You have ridden yourselves into a situation where you have no more external means for escape. And there are people, that have murdered people that are extremely cruel, that have murdered animals and humans, and they don't even get much of a punishment for murdering an animal, which is absolutely wrong. It's equally a capital crime and should be treated as such, but it is not. And there are people that have hurt other living beings, maybe for many years. And so until they finally get caught with something that is, according to our laws, it is regarded as a capital crime. So they finally go to these high security prisons. Some of them are so violent and so dangerous, they have to be locked up in solitary confinement because these people don't even know how to work with them because they are so violent, and they can turn the entire prison into people following them and steering them up into also equal violence and resistance and all of this, and non-cooperation. So they don't know how to handle these people. And so some of the spiritual teachers go into there and try to help, try to do what they can, and try to teach them something. And not everyone is receptive for this, but some people, they realize at this point in time, what do I have to lose? I don't have to lose anything, so I better listen to that guy. Maybe this can somehow get me out of here or help me or calm my brain down, because the medication doesn't calm the brain down either. That's just a temporary fix. Body gets used to it, then they after half a year of taking these things, the doses will have to be increased because the situation hasn't changed. The aggravating factors are still there. The entitlement's still there, the ego is still there. They have ridden themselves further and further into being boxed in, having less and less liberty for things, less and less escape maneuver routes. So they have put themselves into that situation. They always want to think that it is someone else that has victimized them into it, or they think they are the victims. No, you are not. You have ridden yourself into this, and deep down you know it. You have murdered animals and people. Animals are people too. You have murdered other living beings. You have hurt, you've tortured other living beings. That's why you are in there, okay? And for no other reason. So, at least in this country, for no other reason. There are third world countries where they put good people into prison because the good people stand in the way of the people who want to exploit. The good people have rescued animals and people, and they have created something to stop the abuse, and the abuser doesn't want to be stopped. So the abuser, having in third world countries, having the upper hand also with legislation. So they put the good people in prison. But in this country, it is people who are extremely violent who end up in prison. Okay, and this is a fact. Okay, I'm not making this up. This is a fact. Okay, Paul, I'm making a video. I told him that I'm making a video, but he just Paul is so riled up with, oh my gosh, there's a constantly material panic, for example. It's always material panic. And I call this the US illness. That's also what I wanted to mention.